Hello everyone, welcome back to another Star Wars Destiny video. Today Fantasy Flight released a bunch of new spoilers for Legacies. Some of these came from their Rivals draft set article, so they had some of the new cards revealed there. Some of these also come from a couple of community podcasts that were given spoilers, so there will be links in the description below where you can check all those out, as well as a link to the Rivals draft article. There's definitely quite a few spoilers. We're just going to go ahead and jump right in here. First card up, we have Force Rend, 3 resources, blue villain upgrade, ability, plus or 2 range, plus 2 range, resource, special blank, blue character only, and special spend resources equal to the cost of a support or upgrade in play to discard it. So we talked about this with something like Vandalize yesterday, where trigger this special and you can get rid of something that costs 0. So spend resources basically to say, oh, you have a force speed out, get rid of that. You have a holocron out, get rid of that. Or you have a 1 resource costed thing, you trigger a special, spend the resource to get rid of it. Pretty cool, really versatile to get rid of some of the more annoying supports and or upgrades, like I mentioned, like force speed and things like that. We also have 2 damage sides. We have a 2 range and a +2 range. I also like that it has a resource. So you can bait and switch it, flip it to the special to get rid of an opponent's support or upgrade. I'm not sure. I would have loved to see this be neutral, but looks like it's just going to be villain. Obviously, so this looks like a rebel trooper just getting destroyed. So that's probably a good reason why it's villain. But we have again 2 damage sides, and then these 2 sides to get 2 specials to help you get rid of your opponent's supports and upgrades. That is Force Rend. We're going to move into our next card. And next up, we have Nuke Gunray, Separatist Viceroy, villain red character, 8 health, 8 or 11 points depending on if you want to run him at a single die or run him at elite. And again, we have that 1-to-1 ratio on his 8 points to 8 health. 1 indirect damage, 1 focus, 2 disrupt, resource, plus 1 resource, blank. And each opponent gains 1 fewer resources or 1 fewer resource during the upkeep phase to a minimum of 1, unless that opponent discards the top 2 cards of their deck. Really cool ability, really thematic. I think a lot of people are just going to potentially run him, maybe even just at a single die, just to get that ability to where they will get less resources unless they discard 2 cards. So it thematically fits in with what they were doing in episode 1 when they were blockading Nambu. I also like, again, I think people could just run this at 1 just to get that effect. And then also, I think his sides are pretty good. So he has got a 1 damage side with the indirect. He can focus. He's got that 2 disrupt. So he can work with Imperial Inspection. And then also has these 2 resource sides. So he's going to be able to deny the opponent resources unless they get rid of cards. And then he also has 2 resource sides, which he can make resources for himself, as well as the disrupt side to get rid of your opponent's resource. I also like that he's got a focus, so he can switch another die to something else, and then that damage. I also like the point cost on this. Not sure if I'm going to run him at elite. He'll probably get targeted pretty much immediately, just so that effect goes away, where he's giving your opponent 1 less resource every round. But it's a really interesting way to keep them from being able to play the supports and upgrades that they might want, or even the events that they might want, because they'll be getting 1 less resource. However, again, they can discard 2 cards to do that. But I can see him really being put into a discard deck. Like, let's say him and some other characters that have discard on them. And because of your opponent, they may want to discard cards to get that extra resource, to earn that 1 resource back. And then you can pair him with other stuff that has, like I said, has discard sides or discards off the top of the deck or anything like that. I think Nuke Gunray is going to be pretty interesting. So, like the ability, like his sides, we're going to move it to the next card. And next up, we have BB9-E, 1 resource, villain droid support, 1 melee damage, 1 indirect damage, disrupt, discard, special, and blank. And special, reroll an opponent's die, reroll this die instead of removing it from your pool. So he kind of has the inverse of BB-8 special from Awakenings, which was to reroll one of your dice and then also reroll the BB-8 die. The BB-9 lets you reroll one of your opponents, and then also he gets rerolled back into the pool as well. Two damage sides here, so he's got a melee and an indirect. That's pretty good. A disrupt, a discard. I can see BB9-E going into a couple different builds. I think he's a little more useful than BB-8 because he does have the two damage sides and then also the disrupt and discard sides as well. So if you're building a resource denial or mill deck, he could go well in that. And then the special's pretty good too. So if your opponent has focused a bunch of stuff to damage, let's say they have like a 2 range, a +2, and a +3 or something like that, you can make them re-roll the 2 range die. Hopefully they get blank or just something else, and then their modified sides they won't be able to do anything with really. So BB9 is pretty interesting. So one resource gets him out, and then he's got I think good sides, and the special is pretty cool too. I do like that it's basically the reverse of what BB-8 does. So that is BB9. We're going to move into our next card. And next up, we have Zev Aurelius' bow rifle. 3 resources, yellow hero upgrade weapon. We saw part of this card in the upcoming product catalog, but a lot of the game text was blurry. I think we knew it was going to be a mix between modified range and melee damage, but now we actually have the whole card. So again, 3 resources, +2 range damage, +3 range damage, +2 melee, +3 melee or resource in the blank. And then as an action, you can spend 1 resource to resolve this die showing a modifier as if it did not have the modifier. So let's say you have this on a character and that character gets a blank and then you roll the 2 melee on this, 2 melee or 3 melee or one of the sides. You can pay a resource to resolve that essentially. However, when you resolve that, you're only going to be able to resolve that 1 die. You're not going to be able to resolve this in conjunction with other damage sides, at least by using the action. So you only really want to use that action if you have, let's say, like your character roll blanks, and you still want to be able to do damage and you have that resource. I think this card could go well with a character like Chirrut because he has the regular and modified ranged and melee. So he has normal range damage as well as modified range damage, and then normal melee and modified melee as well. So you can get, looks like you can get a potential good amount of damage out with this. And then again, like unless you have this on Chirrut and he rolled a blank and something else, and then this rolled a 3 melee, you can then spend that 1 resource to do 3 melee damage. Or if you're also playing with blue, you have access to Awakenings from the race starter set, or Awakening I should say, which is a 1 resource support which lets you exhaust it to resolve a die with a modifier as if it wasn't modified. However, again, if you do that, you're only able to resolve 1 die. So you're really going to want to use those kind of as a last resort. Like if you have normal melee or range damage with this, you're just going to want to resolve all that at once anyway and resolve them together. But let's say your opponent has manipulates one of your other damage sides, you can still resolve this if you have that resource or if you have Awakenings. So I think this bow rifle could be pretty cool. So that's going to do it for that card. We're going to move to the next one. And next up, we have Force Wave. 3 resources, neutral blue upgrade ability, blue character only, 2 indirect damage, 3 indirect damage, resource, double special for specials for a resource and a blank, and special is deal 3 damage to a character, then 2 damage to another character, then deal 1 damage to a third character. So it does a total of 6 damage spread between 3 different characters. I can see this going really well against, characters that are maybe like all battle droid, like an entire battle droid deck. You hit one of the battle droids for 3, you hit another one for 2, you hit another one for 1. Of course, I think this is a really strong effect, so I think that the resource cost on each of these specials is pretty good. The die also has a resource on it as well, so if you had 2 of these on a character, you could use one to get a resource and use the other to resolve the special. Also, 2 normal damage sides, so you have the 2 indirect damage. So you're looking at a total of 4 damage sides, 2 indirect damage sides, and then the specials. And again, these specials I think could do a ton of damage. So it can hit 3 characters, and it's going to do 3, 2, and 1, which is pretty cool. So if you have a character that's has 1 health to go. You let's say you hit another character for 3, hit another character for 2, then the character that has 1 health left gets hit for 1. This is a pretty cool card and pretty high damage as well, and really good if you're playing against a character deck that has again like 5, maybe like 3, 4, or 5 characters. So that could be pretty good there. That is Force Wave. We're going to move into our next card. Next up, we have Bartering. 1 resource, neutral yellow upgrade ability, 1 focus, 1 discard, resource plus 1 resource special in blank. Special. Gain 1 resource, you may force each player to draw a card. I can see the special being useful if you know your opponent is kind of setting their deck up in a certain way. Let's say you know for some reason that they have a help me. I think what is it? Our only hope in hand, which I believe lets you play that, and then you get to draw a card. You can then play that card for free or discard it to get 2 resources. So let's say you know they have that in their hand, because let's say you're running this in a deck with Thrawn and another yellow character, like maybe like Unkar or something like that. Even though you can't run that at Elite anymore, you can still run it with a single. But let's say you're doing that, and you know that you're trying to get a really big card out for free using our only hope. So with Thrawn, you would know that because you would roll them in, look at their hand to see that they have that card possibly. You can then use this special. You gain the resource. You then force that opponent to draw that card that they are trying to get out for free. And now, unless they have a way to get it back on top of their deck, they're not going to be able to use that card. So I could see it being useful in situations like that. I also like that it has got a focus. Again, focus, discard, and resources. So if you're playing in a deck that generates a ton of resources, resource and the +1 resource size can be pretty good. Also, the special gains a resource as well. And then you don't have to have your opponent draw a card. The special could also just gain 1 resource. If you wanted to make your opponent draw a card, it is a may effect, which means that it is optional to do. So again, this is 1 resource. It might come out, it might work pretty well if you get this out early, and then you have something to overwrite with later. I can see it mostly being useful in a deck that just like I said, like Throne card maybe, where you know they're trying to do something because you see their hand, and you can make them draw the card. And now that they've drawn that particular card, they're not able to play it for free or something like that. Or you have them draw a card off the top of their deck, and then use a mill side or something like that on a different character to have them discard it. That could work as well. So that is Bartering. We're going to move into our next card. Next up, we have Crush the Rebellion. 2 resources, a villain red event. Remove a die showing damage, either ranged, melee, or indirect. Then deal indirect damage to an opponent equal to half the value showing on that die rounded up. So it costs 2. That might be a little bit expensive, but I do like that it, 1, gets rid of a die, either yours or an opponent's. And then it does half of that value rounded up in indirect damage. So if your opponent has, let's say, like a big damage side out, let's say they have a Mace Windu on like 4 melee damage or something like that. You could pay 2 resources, remove that die, gets rid of it, and then does 2 indirect damage. Also, I like that you can use it on your own dice. Let's say you had a range damage and you had like a +3 range damage showing, and your opponent removed, let's say they deflected it or something like that, deflected the base damage away. You can pay 2 resources, get rid of the modified die that you have left, and then deal that indirect damage to an opponent, or half rounded up to an opponent. I think this could be really situational, but it could be interesting just because it is a way to get rid of a die and deal damage. 2 resources though, I'm not sure if that's going to be too expensive, or if you have a way to get this out for free. Maybe General Hux, you could use his special and then play this. If you have like at least 2 characters, you can get it out for free potentially. So this might see play in like a Hux deck where his special will get this out for free. It might be a little too expensive for other decks, but I do like again that it removes a die and then hits with indirect damage as well. So that is Crush the Rebellion. We're going to move into our next card. And next up we have Spell of Removal. 1 resource, blue villain event. Spot a blue character to discard the top card of a deck. If its cost is an odd number, remove a die. So pay 1, discard a card. If it's odd, you also get to remove a die at the same time. This plays into a lot of the other Night Sister cards that got revealed earlier, like the Night Sister Coven, the Crystal Ball, while it's housed and all that kind of stuff. So this could be pretty good. So if you have a way to know that the card um, coming next is odd, like using the crystal ball or something like that, you can then play spell of removal, discard that card, and then since you knew it was going to be odd, you'll be able to remove one of your opponent's dice as well. That could be pretty cool. So one resource, discard, and possible removal could be pretty interesting. Um, not sure if one resource is worth that, or if it's to possibly discard a card, because you still get one card discarded guaranteed, but it may or may not hit the odd number to where it actually removes a die. But we'll just have to see, because I think it could be pretty strong, especially if you know what card is coming up next, or at least what the cost is. So that is the spell of removal. We're going to move it to our next card. And next up, we have Investigate. One resource, blue hero event. Look at the top 5 cards of your deck, add one of them to your hand, and place the rest on top of your deck in the order of your choice. Pretty cool card. So you get card draw out of it, which is nice. And then you get to rearrange the other 4 cards that you looked at. So draw a card that you need, and then kind of stack the cards in an order that you would want to use later. So like I'll get this, I got this card. Next time I draw a card, I'll get that, and then below that will be this. Unless, of course, your opponent is playing like mill when they're milling off the top of the deck. And even if they are, you could you probably would know that by then, but you can look at the top 5 cards, draw one that you don't want them to get rid of, and then put the one that you want them to get rid of on the top. So if they do an effect that has you discard off the top of your deck, you're not losing something that you might want later. So if you put like a bad card on top, not bad, but a card that you want less than the others, when your opponent does their discard, they'll discard the card that you really don't want, and then next time you draw something, it might be something that you need. So this could be pretty interesting. So looking at the top card of your deck, you get this information about what's coming up in the next 5 cards, and then you get to put them in the order that you want, which is pretty cool. So that is Investigate. We're going to move into our next card. Next up, we have Mislead. One resource, neutral blue event. Remove a character die showing a value of 2 or less. It kind of plays a little bit like Isolation. It doesn't have, you don't have to spot a character, but then also it has the limitation of being able to only remove a die with 2 or less on it. Still, it could be solid removal, so Isolation's better, but you can also throw this in your deck, and if they roll a 2 or lower, you pay this, and you can just remove that die. And then on top of that, you don't have to spot a blue character to do it. So that's one of the pros of this over Isolation, is Isolation requires a blue character to be alive on your team. However, they balance it pretty well, because now with Mislead, it could only be a value of 2 or lower. So let's say your opponent rolls out blanks. This would be good to use on them, so they can't re-roll that character die or focus it or something like that. So I think it could be interesting. I think Isolation is a little more useful, but again, this is neutral, so you can run this in a blue hero deck and have a similar effect as well. So that is Mislead. We're going to move into our next card. All right, next up we have the Quick Draw Holster. 0 resources, neutral gray upgrade equipment. After you activate the attached character, you may re-roll any number of their weapon dice. So immediately, though, this is going to take up a slot, so you're only going to be able to re-roll up to 2 weapon dice. If you have this on a character and then 2 weapons, you're only going to be able to re-roll 2, because this will take up one of those slots. However, if you're having this on a character that already has pretty impressive character dice, you can put 2 weapons on them, and then roll that character. Let's say they don't roll well, you can re-roll those dice. Like I said, the negative definitely is the fact that now with this on there, you're only going to be able to have 2 weapons, and I don't see this being useful with just one. So if you had an ability, a weapon, and this, you're only being able to re-roll one of them. I can see this working well with a character like Sabine. So let's say throw this on Sabine, throw a holdout blaster on her, throw a DL-44 on her, or something like that. Or let's say Sabine has the quick draw holster and the holdout blaster on her, and she's got a DL-44 in the discard pile. Go to activate her. You pay the resource cost to get the DL-44 on her, and then you get ambush. So you roll her in as part of her activation, and then you get to quick draw holster, reroll her weapons if they didn't roll well, then still have one action left over from the ambush on DL44 to then potentially resolve dice. So activate Sabine, throw a weapon on her from your discard pile that has ambush, roll her in. You don't roll well, you use the ability quick draw holster to re-roll, and then you have ambush, so you're then able to resolve those those dice. I can see this working pretty well in a deck like that. Again, if you're playing it on a character that requires 3 weapons to do well, you're not going to want this on that character. But if they have like good enough damage sides on them already, this could be pretty interesting. So again, neutral gray. So you could throw this on, even though it's a pistol in the artwork, you could actually throw this on, let's say Vader. If he has like 2 lightsabers on him, you could roll Vader in and then re-roll those lightsabers with the quick draw holster. So it could be pretty interesting, just especially if you pair it with something that lets you activate with an ambush action. Or if you do it with something like Tactical Mastery. So Tactical Mastery, roll the character in, use Quick Draw Holster to re-roll, and then you have one action left over from Tactical Mastery to resolve. So I can see this card being pretty cool, especially in like really aggressive decks. That is Quick Draw Holster again. We're going to move into our next card. Next up, we have Free For All. This came from the draft set article, and I kind of had to blow the picture up because it was kind of small in the article, so it might be a little bit blurry. But it looks like 1 resource, yellow villain event. Remove any number of your dice, then deal indirect damage to an opponent equal to the number of dice you just removed. This is pretty cool. So it kind of is like a fight dirty that hits everything. So fight dirty, you remove any number of yellow dice and then deal that much damage to a character. It's not indirect damage with that. It's just you just deal damage to a character. So if I remove 5 dice, it does 5 damage to a character. This is pretty cool because it can hit hits all your dice. So hits blue, red, yellow, and gray dice, and you can remove any number that you want and then get that much indirect damage. So let's say you have like 5 or 6 dice in your pool. You pay 1, remove it, do 6 indirect damage. Imagine doing that against like a Palpatine or something like that. So that's almost a little less than half of his life right there, with just 1 resource and being able to pull all those dice aside. Again, that's kind of if you roll bad. If you roll well, you probably just want to resolve what you already had. But if if you rolled really badly and then your opponent is manipulating dice, making you re-roll, or just using cards like manipulate to make you turn cards to dice to blanks, you can use free for all, remove all of them, and then deal that indirect damage to your opponent's characters, and they get to kind of decide where it goes. So that is free for all. I think that's kind of cool. We're going to move into our next card. And finally, in today's video, we have Scrapheap, 1 resource, neutral gray support location. This is the first, I think this is the first location support we've seen. After you discard 1 or more cards from an opponent's deck, you may exhaust the support to gain a resource. I think this is pretty cool. So if you're running cards that will definitely just like be milling off the top anyway, you pay 1, get the Scrapheap out, and then, or maybe even run 2 of them. Let's say you use something like the command center location, you trigger that effect, you discard 2 cards off the top of their deck, you then exhaust both of the Scrapheaps to gain 2 resources, 1 from each. Could be really good in a mill deck, especially because you are also getting resources for that. So it's like Ukar Thrawn doesn't make enough money already. Just kidding, but let's say you had this in that deck. You discard cards off the top of their deck with, let's say something like Con Artist. Then every card you discard with that, you can exhaust 1 of these to gain a resource. So I discarded a card, I'll get a resource. Discard a card later in the round, get another resource. And then if you have ways to ready these locations, I don't know if there's any villain ones that do it or ready to support. I know we have some from Hero with strategic planning. So in a Hero deck, this could work well, where you discard cards off the top, exhaust to get a resource, and then strategic planning to reset it. Discard another card off the top, exhaust it again, get another resource. So this could be really good in a build deck, and then you're just making resources on top of that as well, which is pretty good. And that is it for this video. So there'll be a link in the description below where you can check out the draft article, as well as the videos and pages for all the content creators that got these spoilers. So make sure you check that out. Remember the giveaway for the Ultimate Guard deck box and 3 packs of 3 packs of Destiny is still going on. Again, there'll be a link to that in the description as well, where it's the deck box, a pack of Awakenings, a pack of Spirit Rebellion, and a pack of Empire at War. So that is still going on. I again want to thank you for watching. Remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Take care.